What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wash and Gold Talk podcast. And joining me today, Jimmy Watkins, cleveland.com columnist, the man that comes to you with the hottest takes in the land. And we're going to jump right into it, Jimmy. We're back. The NBA has started once again. The 82-game season grind has begun. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets are playing as we record this podcast. And sure, we can get into NBA takes, but the Cleveland Cavaliers start their season on Wednesday night in Madison Square Garden against the New York Knicks. And there's a couple of things that are going on behind the scenes, particularly with the Knicks to start this year, that are already interesting. We talked about the potential for Mitchell Robinson and Josh Hart to be out in yesterday's podcast. Well, now that is confirmed. Mitchell Robinson and Josh Hart are both going to be sidelined for game one of the 82-game season. For New York, obviously, Mitchell Robinson has been load managing during practices over the last couple of weeks, even though he played in a couple of preseason games. Josh Hart, kind of the same way. It's an interesting scenario, but the Cavs go into Madison Square Garden not having to deal with the New York Knicks' best rebounder and arguably their second best rebounder when it comes to Josh Hart. And we know how pesky those two players have been in the past for the Cavs and the dynamic of what they've had going on. Jimmy, let's start here. How big of a blow do you think this is to the Knicks and the potential for them to win game one of the NBA season against this Cleveland Cavaliers team that's dealing with injuries of its own in Darius Garland and Max Strus both being ruled out for the first game of the season as well?
Well, I mean, these are the two biggest torchbearers from the spirit of the series that the Cavs lost a couple years ago in the playoffs, right? Like, Mitchell Robinson is the guy who kept pushing the Cavs under the rim and getting offensive rebounds and bullying Jared Allen. And Josh Hart was the guy that reminded the Cavs that, hey, this rebounding thing's a team game. I'm going to come crashing in from all angles. I don't care that I'm 6'4" and, 20 pounds lighter than some of you guys. I'm coming in. I'm playing with my hair on fire anyways. So, yeah, you're going to lose some energy there. With the Knicks, you lose defense. Mitchell Robinson as a rim protector, even as a switchable defender, you lose some. Josh Hart, one of the most tenacious ball defenders in the league. The Josh Hart, I don't even think Josh Hart has been clear for contact yet. So he's had some back issues. That's more of a legit injury thing going on now. If the playoffs started today, maybe a different conversation. But it's a signal to me that the Cavs are not alone in making sure that they get to the end of the finish line healthy, and the Knicks are sparing no day on the calendar for this. Is it a home opener? MSG is going to be rocking, and two key pieces of your rotation are going to be out of this game. So it hurts the Knicks from that perspective, decrease your chances of winning the game. It hurts the Cavs from the fact-finding perspective we were talking about last night, right? Like, the Cavs are trying to see how they stack up with this team over the course of the next 6 months. They're trying to find ways to beat them, these opportunities to get, on-court reps against them in a serious situation. They only get 3-4 of these games a year. So that hurts the Cavs too. Even if it translates to an easier opening night win, it's going to be another reminder that we have to watch what we're seeing with a grain of salt a little bit. I mean, the Cavs have two starters out as well, so that goes both ways.
Yeah, and I think it's clear that we're talking about a regular season that a lot of people are going to have questions about when it comes to this Eastern Conference and how the standings are going to fluctuate throughout the year because of teams that are going to be more hungry to earn a number one seed or try and have a better seeding when it comes to positions into the playoffs, but also understanding that there are going to be teams that are going to manage injuries with the playoffs in mind. Obviously, as we mentioned, the Cavs are one of them, with Lonzo Ball not playing in back-to-backs and then also being limited to do around 20 minutes a game, but also knowing that the Knicks are going to do it, and there's going to be teams, probably Atlanta, monitoring Kristaps Porzingis' health and all these other things, that teams are going to have to do what they feel is best to be peaking at the right time to have their roster capable of taking them to the next step when it comes to the playoffs. Also on the injury report for the New York Knicks is Karl Anthony Towns, who's questionable with a right quad strain, and then also OG Anunoby, but he's probable with a left ankle sprain. And guys, I know that everybody looks at this matchup and looks at obviously the Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson aspect, but Evan Mobley is huge in this game, and obviously his matchup for a majority of the contest would be Karl Anthony Towns, projected to see if he plays. Jimmy, I think if Evan Mobley has any kind of mobility advantage that he already might have had coming into the season, be able to attack him with speed and physicality, I think this, if Karl Anthony Towns were to play, is probably a great test for what Evan Mobley's physicality standpoint is going to be at, how aggressive, how assertive he is going to put himself, especially when the headline for most stories from storylines is going to be about Donovan versus Jalen Brunson, while Evan Mobley could make his stand in game one of the NBA season, talking about he deserves to be in these conversations and showcase what he's capable of, especially when we know that he'll be still in the game, manning and leading the second unit while Donovan Mitchell's on the bench.
I don't care about the circumstance. I just want to see Evan going. I want to see Evan carry over some of what we saw in the preseason. I want him to explore outskirts of his skill set, do everything, try everything. That's what this regular season is for. That's to some extent what last year was. Last year was kind of pushing him out of the comfort zone in the first place. Say, hey, we're good with you doing this. We know you can do this. How far can you take it? Can we rely on you as a hub of sorts at times? The non-Donovan Mitchell minutes. We're going to throw you the ball a lot, and we're going to let you make a lot of decisions. And we're going to have you dribbling. Whether Cat's out there or whether he's healthy, it doesn't matter, because this goes to back what Kenny's been saying. It's never a sometimes thing. It's never a, Karl Anthony Towns' ankle is hurt, a now thing. It's all the time. It's all the time. No matter who's guarding him, I want to see Evan Mobley playing with an edge, throwing weight around, getting as close as he can to the basket, trying to dunk on people, shooting threes, doing everything decisively with the confidence of a player who knows at this point you're an All-NBA player. You're the Defensive Player of the Year, and you've just had a whole nother summer of work. After this, there's no guesswork anymore. You should know you belong in these conversations. It's just about waiting for everyone else to catch up.
Yeah, and the other thing, now we have to get into the injuries when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the Cavs have had all summer to prepare for not being able to have Darius Garland and Max Strus on the floor for opening night. But now we have to have this conversation about DeAndre Hunter and his availability and the uncertainty behind that, because he only was able to participate in 3-on-3 action in practice on Tuesday ahead of traveling to New York. And obviously we know that the whole knee situation, the injury history when it comes to him, is something that Kenny Atkinson and the staff is going to look at. There were conversations being had behind the scenes at practice between Kenny Atkinson and the Spiro and the injury heads and all those different things about where the injury happened of DeAndre Hunter, how viable it is for him to play. Jimmy, first and foremost, do you think it would be smart for DeAndre Hunter to play in game one because of his injury history and what that could mean for the longevity of this season? Or should they just hold him out and be cautious, as the Cavs are intending to do?
Yeah, so this is where I play the I'm not a doctor card, so I don't know anything about what should be. I can tell you about what is, and what we know about this team, and what we know about DeAndre Hunter is that he's never played more than 67 games in an NBA season before. Played 60 plus games 3 times in his career. Granted, he came into the NBA tail end of I think his first year was the COVID season, so there's 2 years in there where they're playing 72 games instead of 82 games. That plays a role into this. I think that would add one more 60-game season onto his ledger if they had played 82 and he had played the same proportion of those games. That being said, though, because we know that DeAndre Hunter has an injury history, and because we know that the Cavs are taking the most conservative approach to regular season, potentially even more so than last year. Last year, they were playing a very conservative game with the minutes, and they weren't trying to push anything through anything that made them uncomfortable throughout the regular season. It would sound to me, given all of the even like when the Cavs are telling you about, well, we have to consult all these specialists and talk to, the more you tell me about how much you need to talk to the doctors, it sounds like you're softening the fans for an absence on opening night, or as Chris was mentioning last night, trying to butter the Knicks up and say, oh, well, it doesn't sound like DeAndre Hunter is going to play, just to only to play him. To me, that would be a very lame outcome given how low the stakes are, and of course the Cavs' history of sort of muddying these waters with injury distinctions, and those injury distinctions and the lack of clarity there contributing to some of the reputations, the soft reputations, frankly, that some of these guys have caught during the playoffs. I think that would be lame, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility. If there's any risk, game 1 of 82 for a team that is all focused on June, just hold them out. The Knicks are holding guys out too. Maybe that makes it easier for you to hold guys out and see what you like. We talked about last night. See what you have in Jalen Tyson. See what he's ready for. Like on that stage, it's a big stage still for him on opening night, Madison Square Garden. They're going to be on national TV. See what Dean Wade's bringing to the table. Like it can be an exercise in depth for the Cavs. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, it would be a tough fat-finding mission hit to not have one of your core players for this game. But this is an arms race. The Eastern Conference, 4 or 5 teams that you think have a chance. I would say it's Cavs, Knicks, Magic. People think the Hawks. I think less Hawks, but Hawks are in there. And Milwaukee, just because we respect Giannis. It's an arms race in the East because everyone knows that there's an opening here that otherwise wouldn't be. And I think every team is going to be thinking like this. I think there's going to be a lot of resting across, particularly for these teams like the Cavs and Knicks, who know they can stack regular season wins and maybe aren't as concerned about their playoff seeding. Although I would argue, I did a little scenario in my head that I'm sure we'll get to, where like there's a scenario where if the Orlando Magic get the number 1 seed, I think that's a plausible scenario. Then you might see the Knicks in the second round. You don't want that. You don't want that, Cleveland Cavaliers. But I digress. I think a lot of teams are thinking this way, which is just tough for the regular season product because we're all excited. Been watching this Thunder Rockets game tonight. I think NBC's done a great job hyping up the return of the NBA to their network, and it feels like a seismic event. Opening night always does. I'm worried that for Cavs fans, these will be seismic event regular season games will be fewer and further between, particularly given that likely no 15-game winning streak at the beginning of the season. And the extra caution here. That sucks. That sucks to always have to, if you're buying tickets, worry if someone's going to be arrested, or if you're really excited to watch the game. It's going to take Cavs fans longer to get to know this team because of the injuries that already exist and now potentially this.
Jimmy, the other thing about this is like the schematic adjustments that we're talking about the Cavs and the tweaks that they want to do in every facet of the game that Kenny Atkinson is trying to elevate them to a different level. There will be growing pains. So it's going to be difficult for them to do that against a team that is going to be without players that they were planning for. We all know that the Cavs next time playing against the New York Knicks will again be in New York, but this time it will be on Christmas Day. And these two teams could look very different from opening night of the season to December 25th when it comes to what the Cavs are preparing for, the players on the floor that they have, because as we know, everybody tries to play in a Christmas Day game. It is one of the pivotal moments of a career for any NBA player that has dreamed of getting to that stage. I think that's probably the next portion of it when it comes to this matchup, is how different it could look and what the Cavs might be thinking going into this one rather than what happens a couple of months from now. And I think that's a difficult conversation for Kenny Atkinson, who's trying to get into a routine, get into a rhythm. But as we know, each matchup is different throughout down the line, and potentially this one will be different as well. But Jimmy, I think we've talked a lot about the NBA season. We've talked a lot about this matchup in particular, but I think it's time to just get down to the predictions for the season. Obviously, Chris is on the road, getting on a flight currently to go to New York to cover the game tomorrow. But we're here to give you our thoughts about the Cleveland Cavaliers and also what could happen around the Eastern Conference and the NBA for the 2025-2026 season. Jimmy, I'm going to let you start it off. What do you got when it comes to the Cavs, where they'll rank in the standings by the time the 82-game grind is over, and who might be trailing them, who might be in front of them, and what the rest of the NBA might look like.
I do think the Cavs are going to be an awesome regular season team again. I don't know about 64 wins. Awesome. That's really hard to replicate. We already have injuries coming out of the gates here. The list of teams who have gone back-to-back 60-win seasons this century, 7 teams long. There's some champions on there. It'd be a nice bonus, but it's not. Certainly, the Cavs are already signaling that's not what they're striving for. Regular season success has only gotten them so far in the past as a playoff-focused team. So I think their record will reflect that a little bit. I'm thinking high 50s. 60s not out of the question, but I'm thinking high 50s, and I think that puts them 1 or 2 potentially. I mean, the Knicks I think are going to be a great regular season team. I think the Orlando Magic are going to be an absolute freaking regular season juggernaut. Their defense has been one of the best in the league for a couple of years now. I think Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones are huge additions for just creating nooks and crannies that didn't exist before in that offense. Desmond Bane's a guy you have to keep track of when he doesn't have the basketball in his hands. He's a shooter. Tyus Jones is a shooter. That's 2 more reliable shooters than the Magic usually have on the court for the last couple of years at all times. I think there's another elite potentially coming for Paolo Banchero. If Franz Wagner gets his jumper figured out ever, rethink the entire Eastern Conference. I don't know that it's going to happen this year, but that's how highly I think the Orlando Magic. So I guess I'll go Cavs 1 seed, and then I think they make the conference finals with a nice path. Again, you can say you don't care about the regular season so much, but that 1 seed when there are other legitimate contenders below you, that makes a difference. It'll make the path clearer. I think it's a close race at the top between them, the Magic and the Knicks for the 1 seed. Cavs get it. They get to the conference finals, but I'm just not ready to push them over the top yet. And here's why. I was listening to the Zach Lowe show today, and they're talking about the Thunder, and they were talking about how this is a common talking point that the Cavs have given us, which is that it's hard to pick against the Thunder in the playoffs now because they have all this experience from last year of being in adverse situations. The Thunder had a lot of clunkers in the playoffs last year. A lot of moments were like, are these young guys really ready for this? And they got through that part. And I think the Cavs, when they tell us experience is the best teacher, are trying to say those same things. Here is the difference between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Oklahoma City Thunder this season will be drawing from experiences that they overcame. The Cleveland Cavaliers have learned what not to do. Cleveland Cavaliers have learned what not to do in the playoffs. But what evidence do we have that they've learned not to do it? Right now, the Cavs' default setting for playoff adversity is, frankly, panic and playing outside of their identity, right? That's what we saw. Of course, their identity has also been wrapped up in injuries. We understand that. But when they hit a roadblock, they lose who they are. I think as much of the Indiana series was about that last year as it was about injuries. They kind of freaked out at the end of some of those games when the Pacers started making a comeback. And they weren't alone. It happened to every freaking team the Pacers played. They put a unique brand of pressure on you. But the Cavs still didn't handle that pressure well. As much as we want to talk about how weakened the Eastern Conference is, there will still be a moment, maybe 2, maybe more than that, where the Cavs run into that same situation. And I'm sorry, I freaking love Donovan Mitchell. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA. He's one of the most unique buckets that we have in this league. He's the saucier Dwayne Wade. He's great. Evan Mobley, I'm believing the hype. I think he's going to have an awesome season. I think he can make a significant scoring jump this year. I love everything I'm seeing. Darius Garland, awesome as a point guard. Would love to have him run my team. I just don't trust them to be themselves down the road. And I'm not saying the Knicks have proven a ton more than them, but I trust what I see from Jalen Brunson a little bit more in the playoffs. Karl Anthony Towns, not as much, frankly, not as much. But he's taken strides from his playoff panic fouls in the past. And he's been a slightly steadier playoff performer in the past couple of seasons. And I love the Knicks positional side. Mikal Bridges or OG, get to know him. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, get to know him. Or potentially, as I wrote in the Bull Protections, the Giannis trade is also hanging out there for the Knicks. But assume roster stay as is. Get comfortable with it. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland. They're on you. Those were big dudes, long dudes, tough dudes to score on. Josh Hart, dudes, certified playoff badasses. Mitchell Robinson, certified playoff badass. Stamped. I can't say the same about the Cavs. They're such good dudes. I enjoy watching them play. I like all their personalities. I'm just not, I'm still in I need to see it mode, unfortunately for them. In the West, I'll go quick. Thunder. The Thunder, I don't think there's a prediction too crazy for the Thunder this year. I say they're losing to Houston right now, but I think the Thunder could challenge like the Bulls, the Warriors 73 win record this year. I really do. They won 68 last year with Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein missing significant time. And by the way, Chet Holmgren's another year older and more mature. And by the way, J-Dub is another year older and more mature, coming off of an NBA Finals performance that I don't have the doubts anymore. You score 40 in the finals like that, you're good with me. With a torn ligament in your thumb, you're good with me, man. You're a dog. You're a dog. He's cemented as a true Robin to Shea's Batman. I think their defense is suffocating every night. I think they're so freaking deep. Even if they have injuries, they will still be incredible. I mean, they were putting their C team out there sometimes last year and blowing teams out at the end of the year when they took the foot off the gas and they're resting for the playoffs. I get that the West is a monster, but I think that team is a freaking problem and going to take another step up this year. And I think they're going to be the team that break the back-to-back list streak. I think the Thunder win another championship again. We're talking legit dynasty here.
Woo, Jimmy. You hit it with some bang. Okay. Let me get started from the very beginning. All right. Cleveland Cavaliers, where my prediction is for the regular season. I got them 58 wins. I got them as the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. I do have them reaching the NBA Finals, in contrary to what Jimmy has talked about. I do think that there are 3 teams as currently constructed that would give the Cavs a run for their money, and I've mentioned them before on this podcast. Atlanta's size and depth, Orlando's physicality and straight-up size, and then you also have New York, their obvious Eastern Conference Finals appearance and experience, but also just the toughness that comes with playing in New York. But obviously, there's 2 brackets when it comes to the Eastern Conference playoffs, and 2 teams have to make it all the way through to get there. So the likelihood that the Cavs would have to play 1 or 2 of these teams, sure, that's high, but having to play all 3 of them is very unlikely. So, especially how we think the regular season will shake out. I'm not going to go into as deep of who I think is going to finish 2, 3, and 4. I think it's interchangeable between those 3 teams of who could be 2, 3, or 4. I don't know if I think the Knicks are going to be the 2nd seed, as so many analysts have said, because they are already resting players at the beginning of the season. That's going to be an interesting dynamic when it comes to what New York is going to do, and also getting used to Mike Brown's offensive principles and defensive schematics, because we understand that he is a defensive-minded coach, and sure, that lays into the hands of OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, as you mentioned, Jimmy. But what does that mean for Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, 2 players not necessarily known for their defensive abilities? But the 2 biggest threats for the Cavs in the Eastern Conference race are going to be Orlando and Atlanta. I know you don't like Atlanta because of the whole Trae Young debacle, but he is the only player in that starting lineup that is below 6'7" tall, and he's a guy that can create with the ball in his hands, without, and has led the league in assists for multiple years now. And we understand what that means with having more talent around him. You now have Jalen Johnson coming back. You now have Kristaps Porzingis to stretch the floor and also potentially negate what Evan Mobley does offensively, depending on what kind of leap we see from Evan Mobley. And then Orlando, you mentioned it, Jimmy. The Desmond Bane acquisition is huge, but also the understanding that Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are just bullies. And this is going to be the biggest test for me, is the Orlando Magic, if the Cavs were to see them in the Eastern Conference playoffs, because we understood 2 years ago they took them to 7 games without Jared Allen after game 4, understandably so. But still, are the Cavs tougher? That's still going to be the question. until they prove it. Are they going to be able to deal with that physicality? I think DeAndre Hunter's acclimation offensively is going to be such a problem for them. And also having Lonzo Ball coming off the bench, and we know that he's going to be used in a smaller role throughout the regular season. But when the playoffs come up, I expect his minutes to get up to 25, 28, maybe 30 minutes a night, depending on what Kenny Atkinson sees from him and how his body holds up. So I do think that the Cavs have made the acquisitions to be able to steady themselves and be sturdier when it comes to the defensive end of the floor. But also, Darius Garland's been in the gym. Donovan Mitchell's been in the gym. Yes, you're undersized guards, but have you truly accepted that the physicality is going to grow in the playoffs? I think they have. I think they've made the necessary adjustments. And first and foremost, I think they know that they have to lean on their defensive identity to get out and run in transition, get points early before the defense can get set up. And I think that's going to be detrimental for the Orlando Magic in a potential series against the Cavs because they simply can't match the pace of what the Cavs play at. And we've seen that against the Pacers. We've seen that against other teams like the Chicago Bulls, who have given them trouble at time as well. There's a disservice sometimes for being that big, that bulky, that heavy, is not being able to get up the floor as much, and also the wear and tear on your body. So health is the first and foremost the biggest thing when it comes to any team of the NBA season. But I do think the Cavs have what it takes to beat the bullies that they haven't been able to beat in past years. But when we talk about a team that has everything it takes to win the NBA Finals, Jimmy, I'm there with you. The OKC Thunder, and we mentioned it last season, the potential start of a dynasty, right? There are probably, again, 4 teams that you could see coming out of the Western Conference. I'm going with OKC. I'm going with Houston, who OKC is playing currently. I'm going with Denver Nuggets because of the experience and Nikola Jokic. And then the sleeper team, Minnesota, because Anthony Edwards is that guy. And I do think that he's a dog, and he's a guy that has been working even harder on his body to be able to get where he needs to go to carry his team. And obviously, Naz Reid helping out in that second unit, being a leader, is going to be extremely important. It's kind of like a Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley situation over there. But of course, Naz Reid is no Evan Mobley. And let me reiterate this. The only reason that I believe that the Cavs can get past these teams in the Eastern Conference specifically is because Evan Mobley is going to be a top 5 MVP candidate by the end of this year. He's going to jump up to over 20 points a game. He's going to probably average closer to 10, 11 rebounds a game as well. And he's going to initiate offense and also be a guy that the Cavs can rely on when Donovan Mitchell's not on the floor. So he doesn't have to go superhero mode. So he doesn't have to overexert himself. And then when Donovan's on the floor, he can do what he does against any given opponent.
Yeah, I think that's all well said. I love the Nuggets, the Wolves, the Rockets. The non-shooting scares me a little bit. And the Fred VanVleet injury, I'll throw the Warriors in that mix too. Can they get there healthy? That's the question. Those dudes are 1,000 years old. But if they get there healthy, then all of a sudden, all those millennia that Al Horford's been playing basketball becomes an advantage. And Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, same thing. Draymond Green. That's a team that you give Steve Kerr a bunch of veterans who know how to play basketball. That read and react system becomes even harder to defend. And the Warriors had an awesome record with Jimmy. I think they would have made the conference final. I think they would have beat Minnesota last year if Steph didn't get hurt and gone to the conference finals. But we'll never know. And I hate to say it, but one of those old guys is going to miss some time, and it will be a challenging regular season for them, which will make it a more challenging playoffs. I don't know. We'll see about that. I want to say one thing about Mike Brown with the Knicks. The Knicks essentially came to the conclusion that Tom Thibodeau was their JB Bickerstaff. Like, Tibbs, thank you for establishing this great culture, this winning culture, this defensive culture, this culture of grit. It's no accident that the Knicks are one of the pushiest physical teams in the league, and they're being coached by Tom Thibodeau. That is, you could say the same thing about every team that man has ever coached. All right. But they decided, I think, do things. One, his voice was wearing a little thin in that locker room. Remember the Mikal Bridges back and forth about, can we play the bench a little bit more? Please, anybody? I'm dying out here and playing 47 minutes. Similar to JB, I think the Knicks thought maybe Tibbs was leaving some adjustments out there at times. And then, of course, was he preparing his team for the playoffs in the best way by playing those dudes all those minutes in the regular season. I think his philosophy about, well, I need to play them that much so they're ready to play that much. There's some truth to that. And I think that somewhere on the spectrum between Tom Thibodeau, one of my highest paid players, is calling me out about not using the bench, and Kenny Atkinson is barely playing a couple of top 15 players in the NBA 30 minutes a night. There's a happy medium in there. But I just think that Mike Brown is more of a forward-thinking NBA coach, and of course there's an adjustment period with any new coach, but I'm very interested to see. I think there can be a lot of upside to implementing more movement into an offense that was super stagnant and was already very good, by the way. It was already very good because there's a lot of spacing and shooting there, and once you add in a little bit more movement and confusion to a lot of spacing and shooting, there's a lot that makes me very excited. The defensive talent is there. Mitchell Robinson is also there's a lot of mirror. The Cavs and Knicks can find a lot of, Spider-Man meme things about each other. Mitchell Robinson is their Lonzo Ball. He is a massive playoff. I think he was so good in the playoffs last year. I think he can be a playoff ceiling raiser for them, but he needs to play. And history tells us he don't play. So we'll see about that. Having Cat as your playoff 5, history tells us that ain't sustainable. I think Yabusele is going to end up fitting into that situation. That was a great offseason pickup, and I think they knew they are going to need a backup plan for a guy who can fill in at some minutes at the 5. I think he is that. But I just think that Mike Brown sort of modernizing that Knicks offense and having them a little bit more well-rested come playoff time will pay huge dividends at the end of the season.
Yeah, Jimmy, and I think that's really interesting that you say that, because I think it's like a clash of philosophies a little bit when you talk about the Cavs and the Knicks. Like, the storylines are abundant when it comes to these teams, but the Knicks historically want to grind you down, want to wear you out. And ironically enough, the Cavs under Kenny Atkinson want to speed you up and wear you down by doing that, right? It's a physicality versus speed and effort kind of thing. And understanding that Mike Brown is also a product of the Golden State Warriors coaching tree, that him and Kenny Atkinson have a lot of respect for each other, but there's also the fact that they learned a lot of the same things and are going to try and apply a lot of the same things. Ironic enough that they both have now coached the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? And obviously in very different states, but probably the two teams most likely to get to the conference finals and NBA finals were both coached by these coaches. And I think so important when it comes to how we look at this matchup and how everything is going to break out, because there's so many different things that can be talked about in any given moment because of the stylistic changes that are being made. And obviously, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, Kenny Atkinson isn't done with this. He still thinks that the offense can get better than it was last year, and it was a historically great offense. And he's admitted again today after practice that he thinks the defense right now is ahead of the offense. And still, we know that this offense, without Max Strus, without Darius Garland, potentially without DeAndre Hunter, that'll be a different wrinkle that we haven't seen yet, is still capable of putting up points and running teams out of the gym. So I think it'll be a great test no matter who's on the floor. But as I was trying to allude to earlier, I think this will be a different test and a different team that both teams are going to be preparing for when they get ready for the Christmas Day game. But then again, come the playoffs, because who will be available is a completely different question.
Yeah, styles make fights. I think that the old school Knicks and it's a shame we never got a rematch of that playoff series after the Cavs. Again, they have made some progress as a playoff performing team. They still haven't made it out of the second round. They've still never won more than one game past the first round. Just want to put that on everyone's radar, because we are putting a lot of expectations on this team and making a lot of assumptions about them and about the rest of the Eastern Conference, to be fair. That's part of this conversation as well. That's the farthest they've ever been. You need to win 16. They've only won 5, right? It's a shame we never got to see a rematch of that, because I think that the maxed out, faster, pacier, spacier Cavs with Kenny, it would have been a fun style to make fights, the clash of the two philosophies. Right now, I think the Magic are probably closer to that that kind of team. They're kind of the new Knicks, different faces in there. Their initiators are much bigger, obviously, than what the Knicks have with Jalen Brunson. But now it's kind of who can master this style and which team is constructed better for the style, right? I think the Knicks having the wings that they have, the Knicks having a Mikal Bridges and an OG Anunoby, I think that makes a huge difference in that kind of matchup. And then the Cavs answer with DeAndre Hunter, and I mean, I guess the Cavs would throw you, well, Evan Mobley is whatever we want him to be, right? And he can be the answer to a lot of questions. And I'm not going to push back on that. I like I said, I think something big's coming for Evan Mobley. The more we talk about this, the more I'm excited to watch this game. Even though we know guys aren't going to be there, we've been talking about this team and the East all summer, and I'm ready to see some of it. I want to see how it plays out.
Well, as we learned from Chris and how he says it all the time on the podcast, never say never, Jimmy, because while these styles are very clashable, there's a potential that one of the two teams slides in the Eastern Conference standings, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. What could happen in the postseason is still up in the air, Jimmy. They haven't played a single game yet. We still have to wait and see. But I'm excited. I know you're excited. Ball is back. NBA is back on our TVs, and I cannot wait to cover this entire season with you. I appreciate you joining me on today's podcast. But with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. This is where you'll get daily insight and live insight throughout the game of tomorrow's season opener against the Knicks and throughout the entirety of the 2025-2026 season. To get this information, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy. But we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.